I am Garrett, 31 years old, and I own one of the most successful tattoo studios in Boston. 6 years ago, my father called my career choice filthy and cut me out of our family fortune. He could not accept that I chose art over joining our generation's old hardware business. The irony: last month he called asking for $120,000 because my brother Thomas had run the family business into the ground. Let me tell you how it all went down. If you are watching this video, drop a comment telling me where you are from, hit that like button, and subscribe to follow more stories about standing your ground and finding unexpected redemption. I grew up in Woodbury, Connecticut, a small, picturesque town where everyone knew everyone else, especially the Mitchell family. That was us. My grandfather started with a single hardware store downtown in 1950, and my father, Richard Mitchell, expanded it into a chain of 20 stores across 3 states. We were not just wealthy. We were a cornerstone of the community. Our family name appeared on local charity events, school buildings, and business association letterheads. Our home reflected our status. We lived in a colonial-style mansion on 5 acres at the edge of town, complete with a swimming pool, tennis court, and a garage, housing my father's collection of classic cars. Every Sunday, we attended the Presbyterian church where my father served as an elder. Afterward, prominent families would gather at our house for lunch, discussing business and local politics, while the women prepared elaborate meals in our kitchen. My mother, Margaret, played her role perfectly. She hosted charity events, maintained our immaculate home, and most importantly, supported my father unconditionally. She was beautiful, graceful, and mostly silent when it came to family decisions. I saw how she sometimes disagreed with my father, but would only express it through a tight smile or a quick glance. She saved her true opinions for private moments with me and my brother. Speaking of my brother, Thomas was 4 years older and groomed to take over the family business from day one. He had a desk in my father's study before he could write his name. During summer breaks, while other kids played baseball or went swimming, Thomas accompanied our father to store openings and vendor meetings. He soaked up praise for his interest in the business while I received subtle disappointment for preferring to sketch or read. "Mitchell men are businessmen," my father would say, his voice carrying an implicit threat. "We build things that last. We provide for our families. We leave legacies." By the time I was 10, I knew every inch of our flagship store. I could identify dozens of tool brands and recite their profit margins. I hated every minute of it. While Thomas thrived on inventory systems and sales projections, I would sneak to the back office to draw. My sketchbooks were filled with designs for store layouts, tool modifications, and eventually art that had nothing to do with hardware at all. My high school years only intensified the conflict between my natural interests and family expectations. I excelled in art classes but received little acknowledgement at home for those achievements. Meanwhile, my mediocre grades in business electives were cause for lengthy lectures. "You just need to apply yourself," my father would say. Thomas had the highest grade in that class when he took it. During my junior year, I joined the yearbook committee as a designer. When the first edition came out with my illustrations throughout, my art teacher, Mrs. Wilson, pulled me aside. "You have real talent, Garrett," she said. "Have you thought about art school?" I had, constantly. But I knew better than to bring it up at home. Instead, when college application time came around, my father handed me brochures for his alma mater, Cornell University, with its prestigious business program. The applications for Rhode Island School of Design and Pratt Institute that Mrs. Wilson had given me remained hidden in my desk drawer. "The Mitchell name carries weight at Cornell," my father said. "You will make connections there that will serve you for life." In the fall of 2012, I enrolled at Cornell as a business administration major. My roommate, Derek, was the son of one of my father's golf buddies. The course schedule matched what Thomas had taken 4 years earlier. My path seemed predetermined, etched in stone like our family name on the local hospital wing. "You will thank me someday," my father said, as he helped move my things into the dorm. "This is the foundation of your future." I nodded and smiled. I had gotten very good at that. College was supposed to be where I would finally embrace the Mitchell legacy. Instead, it became where I discovered who I really was. While I dutifully attended economics lectures and management seminars, I found myself gravitating toward the arts quadrangle whenever possible. I would sit on benches, sketching students, buildings, and landscapes, finding more fulfillment in those stolen moments than in any business class. During sophomore year, I added an art minor, telling my parents it would help with marketing and store design. It was a small act of rebellion, but it felt monumental. For the first time, I had professors who encouraged my creativity rather than my conformity. The real turning point came during winter break of my junior year. My friend Jake suggested we get tattoos to celebrate finishing finals. I had never considered getting a tattoo, much less becoming a tattoo artist. In our family, tattoos were for hooligans and sailors, according to my father. We went to a shop called Eternal Ink in Hartford. The moment I walked in, something clicked. The buzz of machines, the smell of antiseptic, the walls covered in flash art, all of it felt more like home than our family mansion ever had. My artist was a man named Maxwell Brown. In his 40s, with full sleeves of intricate blackwork tattoos, he had the calm confidence of someone who had mastered his craft. As he worked on a simple compass design on my shoulder, we talked about art, creativity, and finding your path. "What do you really want to do with your life, kid?" he asked, wiping excess ink from my skin. "I am studying business," I replied automatically. That is not what I asked. His question haunted me for days afterward. When I returned to the shop a week later with a portfolio of drawings, Maxwell looked through them, silently nodding occasionally. "You've got something," he finally said, raw but promising. "Come back tomorrow if you want to learn more." That began my secret apprenticeship. While my family thought I was taking extra classes or studying with friends, I spent every available moment at Eternal Ink. Maxwell taught me about line work, shading, color theory, and composition. More importantly, he showed me that art could be a viable career, not just a hobby. "There are people making 6 figures doing this," he told me. "But you have got to be all in. Half measures do not cut it in this industry." By graduation, I had a decision to make. My father had already prepared an office for me at company headquarters. Thomas had been working there for years, handling the marketing and expansion plans, while my father managed operations and finance. The path was clear, secure, and utterly suffocating. The day after graduation, I sat my parents down in the living room. My hands were shaking, but my voice remained steady. "I am not joining the family business," I said. "I want to pursue tattooing as a career." My father laughed, thinking it was a joke. When he realized I was serious, his expression hardened. "This is just a phase," he said dismissively. "You will get it out of your system and come to your senses." "It is not a phase. I have been apprenticing for almost 2 years now." That was when the yelling started. Words like disappointment, waste, and ungrateful filled our echoing living room. My mother sat silently, eyes downcast. Thomas stood in the doorway watching, with a mixture of confusion and what might have been envy. "No son of mine is going to throw away generations of hard work to draw pictures on people," my father roared. "If you want to play artist, do it on your own time after you fulfill your responsibilities to this family." "This is not playing. This is who I am," I replied, surprising myself with my calmness. The argument lasted for hours, ending only when I announced I had signed a lease on an apartment in Boston and would be moving the following week. I had saved enough from summer jobs and some commission work Maxwell had thrown my way to cover a few months of expenses. "You walk out that door to pursue this nonsense. Do not expect any financial support," my father warned. I walked out anyway. Those first months in Boston were brutal. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Allston, a neighborhood known for its student population and affordable rents. Affordable was relative, though. Even my modest place consumed most of my savings within the first 3 months. I found work at Black Lotus Tattoo, a well-established shop where the owner, Diana, recognized my potential but also my inexperience. "Your technical skills need work," she told me after reviewing my portfolio, "but you have a distinctive style. Start as our shop assistant, prove yourself, and we will see where it goes." For 6 months, I cleaned stations, prepared stencils, ordered supplies, and observed every artist who would let me watch. At night, I practiced on synthetic skin, and occasionally on friends brave enough to trust me. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, counting pennies and declining calls from my parents. My mother would leave voicemails, her voice tinged with worry and sadness. "Your father will come around," she would say. though we both knew better. Thomas called once, awkwardly trying to mediate. "Just come home for a weekend," he suggested. "Show Dad some of your work. Maybe if he sees how serious you are about this." But I knew my father. He did not change his mind. People changed to accommodate him. That was not going to be me. Not anymore. By the end of my first year in Boston, I had moved up from shop assistant to apprentice tattoo artist at Black Lotus. Diana recognized my dedication and technical improvement, allowing me to take on simple designs for walk-in clients. Each successful tattoo built my confidence and expanded my portfolio. "You have got a good eye for placement and composition," Diana noted after watching me complete a small floral piece on a client's wrist. "Your line work is getting cleaner too." I developed a specialization in fine-line blackwork with geometric elements, a style that began attracting repeat clients. My Instagram account, which I had started reluctantly at Diana's insistence, grew from a few hundred followers to several thousand. Each post brought in new clients asking specifically for my work. Meanwhile, back in Connecticut, the family business appeared to be thriving. Thomas would occasionally text me photos from store openings or company events, always with our father front and center, beaming with pride. These messages felt like subtle reminders of what I had given up, though I never could tell if that was Thomas's intention or my own insecurity speaking. Holiday visits home became exercises in tension management. My first Thanksgiving back, my father barely acknowledged my presence, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary. My mother tried desperately to bridge the divide, steering conversations toward neutral topics like her garden club or local news. "Tell us about Boston, dear," she would say, only for my father to interrupt with some business anecdote before I could answer. Thomas played the dutiful son, nodding enthusiastically at our father's stories while shooting me apologetic glances. I noticed he drank more than I remembered, refilling his wine glass throughout dinner and excusing himself frequently to take phone calls. By my second year in Boston, I had become a full-time artist at Black Lotus with a growing waitlist of clients. A feature in Northeast Tattoo magazine brought new attention to my work, describing me as an emerging talent with a distinctive aesthetic that bridges traditional craftsmanship with contemporary sensibility. Diana pulled me aside after the article came out. "You should think about your next steps," she said. "You have outgrown apprentice status. You could command higher rates. Maybe even consider your own space eventually." The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Opening my own studio had been a distant dream, something for someday. Now it suddenly seemed possible. Back in Connecticut, cracks were beginning to show in the family business facade. During a rare phone call with my mother, she mentioned that 2 of the newer store locations were underperforming. "Your father and Thomas are working so hard," she said with forced cheerfulness. "They barely come home before 9 most nights." When I asked Thomas about it during our occasional text exchanges, he brushed it off. "Just growing pains. Dad is letting me handle the situation. Great opportunity to prove myself." Despite our strained relationship, I still felt compelled to visit home for major holidays. During Christmas of my 3rd year away, I noticed subtle changes in our family dynamics. My father seemed more irritable than usual, snapping at my mother over minor issues. Thomas appeared exhausted with dark circles under his eyes and a nervousness I had never seen in him before. The family business came up less in conversation, replaced by vague references to challenging market conditions and adjusting strategies. When I mentioned a potential collaboration with a clothing designer who wanted to incorporate my designs, my father scoffed. "Playing dress up with your little drawings," he muttered. Meanwhile, real businesses face real challenges. It was the most he had directly said to me all evening. By my 4th year in Boston, I had saved enough to consider opening my own small studio. A space became available in Cambridge, close to Harvard Square, with great foot traffic and visibility. The rent was steep, but the location was perfect for the upscale clientele I had begun to attract. I took the leap, investing my savings into creating Waypoint Studio, a space that reflected my aesthetic, clean minimalist, with carefully curated artwork and custom furniture I had designed myself. I hired a receptionist and another artist whose style complemented mine but did not compete directly. The grand opening exceeded my expectations. Clients from Black Lotus followed me, bringing friends and posting photos of my new space. Local blogs covered the opening, highlighting my journey from apprentice to studio owner in just 4 years. My calendar filled with bookings 3 months out within the first week. As my professional life flourished, my connection to my family withered. Calls became rarer. Visits grew shorter and more uncomfortable. My mother still tried to maintain our relationship, sending care packages and updates about family friends, but always carefully avoiding mentions of my father's opinions. That Thanksgiving, feeling confident in my success, I decided to share news about an expansion I was planning for Waypoint. A lifestyle magazine had approached me about featuring the studio, and the publicity would allow me to add 2 more artists and a piercer to my team. It was a major milestone, proof that my phase had become a thriving business. I waited until dinner was served, hoping the presence of food might temper reactions. I wanted to let you all know, I began during a lull in conversation. Waypoint is expanding. I am adding more artists and services next month. My mother smiled genuinely. That is wonderful, sweetheart. You always had such a good eye for business opportunities. Thomas nodded, raising his glass half-heartedly. Congrats, bro. My father set down his fork with deliberate slowness. The silence stretched uncomfortably before he spoke. So you expect us to celebrate that your little hobby shop is adding more degenerates to draw graffiti on people? His voice was low, controlled, but filled with venom. While you have been playing tattoo artist, your brother and I have been fighting to preserve what 4 generations of Mitchells have built. Richard, please, my mother whispered. No, Margaret, he needs to hear this, my father continued, pointing his finger at me. You chose a filthy career over family obligation. You abandoned your legacy to enable people to mutilate their bodies. And now you want congratulations. The word filthy hung in the air between us. I had expected disapproval, even anger, but the disgust in his voice cut deeper than I had anticipated. My studio grossed $400,000 last year. I replied, my own anger rising. I employ 5 people who can support their families because of opportunities I created. There is nothing filthy about honest work or art that brings people joy. My father's face reddened. Money earned from vanity and permanent markings on skin does not compare to building something that serves a community, that continues a family tradition. Dad, maybe we should, Thomas began. But our father cut him off. You made your choice, Garrett. And now I am making mine. Do not expect to see a penny of the Mitchell fortune or business. I am removing you from my will, effective immediately. Thomas will inherit everything as he should. At least one of my sons understands the meaning of family duty. My mother gasped. Thomas stared at his plate, saying nothing. Richard, you cannot mean that, my mother said, tears forming in her eyes. I have never been more serious about anything in my life, my father replied, his voice ice cold. He turned his back on us. Now we are returning the favor. I stood up slowly, napkin falling to the floor. Thank you for making this easy, Dad. I never wanted your money. I just wanted your respect. Now I know. I will never have either. I left that night despite my mother's tearful pleas to stay and work things out. As I drove back to Boston through the darkness, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. The last pretense of family harmony had been stripped away, leaving only the truth. I was on my own completely and irrevocably, and somehow that knowledge made me feel freer than I ever had before. The drive back to Boston that night was the longest 3 hours of my life. Rain pelted my windshield as I replayed my father's words over and over. Filthy career. Mutilate their bodies. Removing you from my will. Each phrase stung like alcohol on an open wound. I had known for years that my father disapproved of my choices, but the sheer contempt in his voice that night revealed the depth of his disappointment. What hurt most was not being cut off financially. I had been supporting myself for years, but the finality of his rejection. My own father had looked me in the eye and essentially said I was no longer his son. I called my closest friend Ryan when I got back to my apartment. He actually disowned you? Ryan asked after I recounted the evening. Over tattoos. What century is your dad living in? The same one where family businesses are passed down like royal titles, I replied, exhaustion seeping into my voice. I knew he was disappointed, but I never thought he would go this far. The next morning, my phone was filled with missed calls and texts from my mother. I could not bring myself to respond immediately. Thomas had sent a single message: "Dad will calm down. Give it time." But I knew better. Richard Mitchell did not make idle threats, and he never backed down once he had taken a stand. The bridge between us had not just been damaged, it had been deliberately burned. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work with renewed intensity. The studio expansion plans became my obsession. I extended my working hours, often staying until midnight, redesigning the space, researching equipment, and interviewing potential new artists. If my father thought my career was worth disowning me over, I would make it so successful he would have to eat his words. My mother continued calling her voicemails, becoming increasingly distressed. Finally, a week after Thanksgiving, I called her back. "Oh, Garrett," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I have been so worried. Are you all right?" "I am fine, Mom," I lied. "Just busy with the studio." "Your father did not mean what he said," she insisted. "He was upset, that is all. You know how he gets when he feels challenged." "He meant every word," I replied. "And honestly, it is better this way. No more pretending, no more uncomfortable holidays." "But we are family," she protested. "Are we?" "Because it seems like I stopped being part of this family the moment I chose a different path than the one Dad laid out for me." My mother went quiet for a moment. "Will you still come for Christmas?" she finally asked, her voice small. "I cannot, Mom. Not this year." It was the first Christmas I spent away from home. Ryan invited me to join his family, but I declined, choosing instead to volunteer at a community dinner for those who, like me, had nowhere else to go. There was something healing about serving others who understood what it meant to be cut off from family. January brought a profile of Waypoint Studio in Boston Magazine. The photographer captured the essence of the space, the clean lines and thoughtful details. The article highlighted my journey from corporate heir apparent to tattoo innovator, complete with quotes from satisfied clients and industry peers. I sent a copy to my mother, but never asked if she showed it to my father. By March, the studio expansion was complete. We now had 5 artists, including myself, each with distinct specialties that complemented one another. A piercer joined our team, bringing her established clientele. Our booking system now scheduled appointments 6 months in advance with a wait list for cancellations. That spring, a celebrity actress visited Boston for a film shoot and came to Waypoint for a tattoo. Her Instagram post showcasing my work gained tens of thousands of likes and brought a wave of new inquiries. We had to hire an additional receptionist just to manage the increased volume of calls and emails. Success should have been satisfying, and in many ways it was. But the void left by my family's absence created a hollow space that achievement could not fill. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Lawson, who specialized in family estrangement. "Your father's rejection reflects his limitations, not yours," Dr. Lawson told me during one session. "You have built something meaningful on your own terms. That takes tremendous courage." "Then why does it still hurt so much?" I asked. "Because we are wired for connection, especially with our parents. That desire for approval does not simply disappear because we intellectually recognize it may never come." Through therapy, I began to build what Dr. Lawson called my chosen family, strengthening relationships with friends and colleagues who supported my authentic self. Diana from Black Lotus became a mentor and friend. My team at Waypoint created a community bound by shared passion and mutual respect. My mother and I maintained contact through carefully scheduled phone calls, always when my father was out of the house. She never directly mentioned the will or my father's ultimatum, focusing instead on her garden club activities or community events. I could hear the strain in her voice, the effort it took to maintain this shadow relationship. Thomas and I exchanged occasional texts, mostly surface-level check-ins. He seemed increasingly stressed, his messages brief, and sometimes sent at odd hours of the night. When I asked about the business, his responses were vaguely positive but lacking in specifics. "Dad has everything under control," became his standard reply. The following Thanksgiving, I stayed in Boston again, hosting a dinner for my staff and their families at my apartment. As we sat around tables pushed together in my living room, sharing food and stories, I realized I had created something my father had never managed. Despite his business success, a genuine community based on respect rather than obligation. By the 2-year mark after being disowned, Waypoint Studio had become one of the most sought-after tattoo establishments in New England. We had been featured in national publications. I had guest spots at prestigious studios in New York and Los Angeles. My Instagram following had grown to over 300,000. The filthy career my father had dismissed was now generating over 7 figures annually. Yet, despite all evidence of my success, there was no acknowledgement from my father, no congratulatory call, no admission that perhaps he had been wrong about the viability of my chosen path. The silence from that quarter remained absolute. Until unexpectedly it did not. The first hint that something was wrong with the family business came from my mother in early spring, about 2 years after the disowning incident. During one of our regular calls, she mentioned that they had downsized the house staff to just a weekly cleaning service. "Your father says it is more private this way," she explained with forced brightness, "but between us I think it is a budget decision." For a family that had employed a full-time housekeeper and groundskeeper for as long as I could remember, this was a significant change. When I gently pressed for more information, my mother grew evasive. "Everything is fine, Garrett. Just some adjustments while Thomas takes on more responsibility." Over the next few months, more concerning signs emerged. My mother mentioned they were postponing the annual family vacation to their beach house in Maine. Then came news that they had decided to simplify by selling my father's beloved boat. These were not the actions of a thriving family business. During a rare call with Thomas, I directly asked about the company's health. "We are just experiencing some cash flow issues," he said too quickly. "The hardware industry is changing. Online competition, Dad and I are implementing a strategic restructuring." His business school jargon could not hide the tension in his voice. Something was seriously wrong, but family pride, both his and mine, prevented a more honest conversation. I decided to do some investigating on my own. The Mitchell Hardware website, once regularly updated with promotions and news, had not been refreshed in months. Their social media accounts showed decreased activity. A quick search of local business news revealed that 2 of their newer locations had closed temporarily for renovations, according to the press releases. On a weekend trip to Connecticut to visit a friend, I drove past our flagship store. The parking lot was nearly empty on a Saturday afternoon, traditionally their busiest time. The building exterior, once impeccably maintained, showed signs of neglect. Faded sale banners hung in windows, advertising discounts my father had previously considered beneath the Mitchell brand. Inside, the situation was even more telling. Shelves were sparsely stocked. The staff, once plentiful and attentive, was reduced to a skeleton crew of mostly young, inexperienced-looking employees. The premium tool section, once the pride of Mitchell Hardware, displayed obvious gaps where high-end merchandise should have been. I overheard a customer asking about a backorder. "We are expecting that shipment any day." "Now," the harried cashier responded in a tone that suggested this was a practiced line rather than the truth. When I called my mother that evening, I was direct. "Mom, what is really happening with the business? I was in town and saw the store. Things do not look good." A long silence followed. Then, in a whisper, "Your father would be furious if he knew I was telling you this." "He is not going to hear it from me," I assured her. She took a deep breath. "Thomas has made some mistakes, Garrett. Big ones. He expanded too quickly into areas your father advised against. The inventory management system he implemented has been a disaster." And her voice dropped even lower. "I think he has been gambling." Gambling, Thomas. This shocked me more than the business troubles. My straight-laced rule-following brother had always seemed the least likely person to develop such a vice. Your father found bank withdrawals he could not explain. Large ones. When confronted, Thomas broke down and admitted he had been going to Mohegan Sunday. He said it started as client entertainment, but became something more. The picture was becoming clearer. Thomas, pressured to maintain the business legacy single-handedly after I left, had cracked under the strain. The gambling had likely begun as a way to escape that pressure, then spiraled as losses mounted, and he tried to recoup them. "How bad is it, Mom, really?" 3 stores have closed already. Suppliers are demanding payment up front now, which is impossible with our cash situation. The bank is. She paused, choking back a sob. The bank is threatening to call in loans. Your father had to mortgage the house. My stomach dropped. The Mitchell family home had been paid off for generations. For my father to put it up as collateral, the situation must be dire indeed. Does Dad have a plan? I asked. He keeps saying Thomas will figure it out, that admitting the extent of our troubles would hurt the Mitchell name more than quietly handling it internally. But Garrett, her voice broke. I am scared. Your father is not sleeping. His blood pressure is through the roof. I found him crying in his study last week. The image of my stoic, unyielding father reduced to tears was almost impossible to imagine. Richard Mitchell did not cry. He solved problems through sheer force of will and Mitchell determination. If he was breaking down, the situation was beyond critical. Over the next month, I kept closer tabs on the family business through industry contacts and local news. 2 more stores closed permanently according to brief press releases. A business journal reported that Mitchell Hardware had laid off 30% of its corporate staff. Suppliers began to whisper about delayed payments and reduced orders. During a tattoo convention in Hartford, I made a detour to my hometown. As I drove through the familiar streets, I noticed other signs of the Mitchell business empire crumbling. The community center that had borne our family name had a new sign featuring a corporate sponsor. The annual Mitchell Family Scholarship at the local high school had not been awarded that year, according to the school newsletter. On a whim, I drove by Thomas's house, a Tudor-style home not far from our parents'. His luxury SUV was gone, replaced by a modest sedan in the driveway. The landscaping, once immaculate, showed signs of neglect. Later that day, by sheer coincidence, I encountered Thomas at a gas station off the highway. I almost did not recognize him. My once impeccably groomed brother looked disheveled with unkempt hair and wrinkled clothes that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost weight, and dark circles underscored his bloodshot eyes. "Garrett," he said, genuine surprise in his voice when he spotted me. "What are you doing here?" "Just passing through," I replied, studying his face. "You look rough, Thomas." He attempted a smile that came out as more of a grimace. Rough times all around. We stood awkwardly by the gas pumps, years of distance and resentment between us. Finally, I asked, "How bad is it really?" Thomas glanced around as if worried someone might overhear, then shrugged. "Bad enough that Dad spends most nights staring at spreadsheets trying to figure out which parts of the business can be salvaged. And the gambling." His face hardened. "Mom told you. She is worried about you. About all of you." "Worry does not solve problems," he snapped, sounding eerily like our father. Then, deflating slightly, "I have not been to a casino in 6 months. Not since Dad found out. Too late to matter much now." "Is there anything I can do?" I offered, surprising myself with the sincerity of the question. Thomas laughed bitterly. "Unless you have got a spare million lying around from your tattoo business." I doubt it. He emphasized the word tattoo, with just enough disdain to remind me of the family hierarchy. Even in crisis, he was still the legitimate heir, and I, the disappointing artist. "Take care of yourself, Thomas," I said, finally turning to leave. "Must be nice," he called after me, watching from a safe distance while everything falls apart. I paused but did not turn back. I was pushed to that distance, remember. Not my choice. As I drove back to Boston that evening, I found myself unexpectedly emotional. Despite everything, these people were still my family. Their pain still affected me, even after years of rejection. The Mitchell legacy that had been held over my head as the ultimate value was disintegrating, and I felt no satisfaction in the vindication, only a profound sadness. I had built my own success while they lost theirs. But that night, as I lay awake thinking about my father's tears and my brother's haunted eyes, victory felt hollow. The call came at 11:30 on a Tuesday night in late October, nearly 2.5 years after I had been disowned. I almost did not answer. When I saw DAD on my caller ID, a contact I had kept but never expected to see again. Something, perhaps curiosity or lingering family loyalty, made me pick up. "Hello," I said cautiously. There was a long pause then, my father's voice sounding older and more uncertain than I had ever heard it. "Garrett, it is your father." "I know who it is," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It is almost midnight." "Yes, he cleared his throat. "I apologize for the late hour. I would not call if it was not important." The formality in his voice was so at odds with the raw emotion underneath that I found myself gripping the phone tighter. My father did not apologize. He did not call at inappropriate hours, and he certainly did not sound vulnerable. "What is it? Is Mom okay?" "Your mother is fine, physically at least." Another pause. "Garrett, I need to speak with you about a business matter." I almost laughed at the absurdity. After disowning me over my career choice after years of silence, his first contact was about business matters. "It is late, Dad. If this is about the family business, I am afraid I cannot help. As you made abundantly clear, I am no longer part of that legacy." "Please," he said, the word sounding foreign in his mouth. "Just listen." I remained silent, which he took as permission to continue. "The situation is dire," he admitted, each word seeming physically painful for him to say. "We have closed 12 stores. The remaining 8 are operating at significant losses. Our creditors have given us 30 days to demonstrate solvency, or they will call in all outstanding loans. I am sorry to hear that I said meaning it despite everything. But I do not see what this has to do with me." Another long pause. I could almost see him in his study swallowing his pride with each passing second. "We need $120,000 to keep the core business afloat until the restructuring plan can take effect." The request hung in the air between us. $120,000. A sum that would have been trivial to the Mitchell family I grew up in, but now represented a lifeline they could not secure elsewhere. "You cut me out of the family, called my career filthy, and now you want me to bail out the business." I could not keep the incredulity from my voice. "Where is this money supposed to come from, Dad? My filthy tattoo earnings?" "I know how it sounds," he said, his voice strained. "Believe me, I would not ask if there were any other options. We have tried everything, Garrett. Second mortgages, equipment, sales, personal loans. Thomas has liquidated his investments and retirement accounts. And yet you call me the son you disowned. This is not just about me or Thomas," he continued, a note of desperation creeping in. "It is about 4 generations of Mitchells, your grandfather's legacy, your great-grandfather's vision. Once we stabilize, we can rebuild." The Mitchell name still means something in this industry. The irony was almost too much to bear. For years, that name and legacy had been used as a weapon against me, a constant reminder of how I had failed to live up to family expectations. Now my father was invoking it as a reason I should help. "I need time to think about this," I said finally. "We do not have much time, son," he replied, the word son slipping out perhaps unconsciously. "I am not promising anything, I warned. And do not call me son. You gave up that right at Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago." After hanging up, I sat in my darkened apartment, mind racing. My first instinct was vindictive satisfaction. The mighty Richard Mitchell reduced to begging for help from the son he had rejected. It would be so easy, so justified, to refuse. But beneath that initial reaction lay more complicated feelings. Despite everything, these people were my blood. My mother, who had always shown me love in her quiet way. Even Thomas, who had been as much a victim of our father's expectations as I had been, albeit in different ways. The next morning I called my oldest friend from the tattoo world, Maxwell, the artist who had first taken me under his wing. "He has got some nerve," Maxwell said after I explained the situation. "Calling you for a bailout after how he treated you." "I know. But if I refuse and the business fails completely, what does that make me?" I asked. Human Maxwell replied simply, "Nobody would blame you for walking away." "I would," I admitted. "Not because I owe him anything, but because I would be acting out of the same pride and stubbornness I always resented in him." Over the next week, I did my due diligence. I spoke with a business consultant friend who specialized in retail turnarounds. I researched the hardware industry trends. I even hired a private investigator to verify my mother's claims about Thomas's gambling problem and confirm it had indeed stopped. Most importantly, I examined my own financial situation. Waypoint Studio was thriving with revenues exceeding projections quarter after quarter. I had been saving for a potential second location. $120,000 would delay that plan but not derail it entirely. I could afford to help if I chose to. The question was whether I should. I scheduled another call with my mother, this time when I knew my father would be home. When he picked up, I was direct. I need complete financial transparency before I consider any assistance, I said. All accounts, all debts, all assets. And I want to see the restructuring plan you mentioned. My father hesitated, his instinct for privacy warring with desperation. That is sensitive information, Garrett. So is my bank account, which you are asking me to open to you, I countered. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. 48 hours later, I received a password-protected file containing the Mitchell Hardware financial records for the past 5 years. The documents painted a grim picture. Thomas's mismanagement had been even more severe than I had imagined. Inventory purchases that never aligned with sales trends. Expensive renovations to stores that were already underperforming. Marketing campaigns with negligible returns on investment. And scattered throughout evidence of what my mother had hinted at: unexplained cash withdrawals, first small, then increasingly large. Nearly $300,000 had disappeared over 18 months before abruptly stopping around the time my mother said my father had confronted Thomas. The restructuring plan itself was sound in concept, but desperate in execution. It involved closing all but 5 core stores, dramatically reducing staff, and focusing on contractor sales rather than retail. With proper implementation and adequate capitalization, it might work. But the $120,000 my father requested was barely enough to keep those 5 stores operational while the changes took effect. My sleepless nights continued. I consulted Dr. Lawson, my therapist, who cautioned me about re-entering toxic family dynamics, but also acknowledged the opportunity for potential healing if approached carefully. "What do you hope to gain from this?" she asked during our session. "Money aside, what would make this worthwhile for you emotionally?" Recognition, I admitted after reflection. Not just of my success, but of my value as a person apart from the family business. Acknowledgement that my path was valid even if it was not what they wanted for me. "And are you prepared for the possibility that financial assistance will not secure that recognition?" she asked gently. "I have to be," I replied. "I cannot control their reactions, only my actions." After 2 weeks of deliberation, I made my decision. I would help, but not without conditions that protected both my financial investment and my emotional well-being. The Mitchell family might need my money, but I needed something just as valuable from them: respect. I arranged to meet my father and Thomas at a neutral location, a conference room at a hotel halfway between Boston and our hometown. I arrived early, setting up my laptop and organizing the documents I had prepared. When they entered, I barely recognized them. My father, once the embodiment of confident authority, looked diminished. His shoulders slumped slightly, his face lined with worry and exhaustion. Thomas appeared even worse than when I had seen him at the gas station, like a man gradually disappearing under the weight of failure. "Thank you for coming," my father said stiffly, extending his hand as if we were meeting for a business transaction. In many ways, we were. "Let us sit down," I suggested, gesturing to the chairs. "We have a lot to discuss." For the first hour, we reviewed the financial information they had provided along with my own analysis. I had prepared spreadsheets showing exactly where their restructuring plan needed adjustment, where additional cost savings could be found, and realistic revenue projections based on industry benchmarks rather than wishful thinking. "Your core problem is not just financial," I explained, pointing to a chart on my laptop screen. "It is operational. You are running a 20th century business model in a 21st century marketplace." Thomas bristled slightly. "We have an online store. You have a website that processes orders," I corrected. "That is not the same thing as a true digital strategy. Your inventory system is still primarily manual. Your customer data is underutilized. Your social media presence is practically non-existent." My father rubbed his temples. We came here to discuss financial assistance, Garrett, not a complete business overhaul. The two are inseparable, I replied calmly. I am not going to invest in a business that is fundamentally broken without addressing the underlying issues. Invest. My father caught the word immediately. So you are considering helping? I am considering a structured arrangement that would benefit all parties, I said carefully. But before we discuss terms, there are personal matters we need to address. The tension in the room thickened. This was the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating. My father straightened in his chair, some of his old defensiveness returning. What personal matters? I looked him directly in the eyes. You disowned me. You called my career filthy. You cut me out of the family fortune. And now you want my financial help. Before we go any further, I need to understand if your perspective has changed or if this is purely a transaction. My father looked away first, his gaze dropping to the table. The silence stretched uncomfortably. I was wrong, he finally said so quietly I almost missed it. About your career. About you. Thomas looked as shocked as I felt. Richard Mitchell did not admit mistakes. I saw your studio website, my father continued, still not meeting my eyes. The article in Boston Magazine. The client testimonials. You have built something substantial. Something with value. Something that he paused, seeming to search for the right words. Something that helps people express themselves. I did not understand that before. It was not a full apology, but from my father it was monumental. I nodded, allowing him the dignity of not having to elaborate further. And you, Thomas, I turned to my brother. We need to address the gambling. Thomas flinched as if I had struck him. It is under control, he said defensively. Is it? Or is it just on pause because there is nothing left to lose? His face crumpled, the facade of control collapsing entirely. I never meant for it to get so bad, he whispered. It started as just a distraction. A way to unwind after stressful days. Then I lost more than I could afford and I tried to win it back, and then he gestured helplessly. Everything spiraled. Have you gotten help? I asked, softening my tone. Dad made me go to a few Gamblers Anonymous meetings, he admitted. They helped, but I stopped going when things got really busy with the business crisis. Which is exactly when you need support the most, I pointed out. Stress was your trigger in the first place. My father cleared his throat. What exactly are you proposing, Garrett? I opened a folder and slid 3 copies of a document across the table. These are my conditions for providing financial assistance. They both leaned forward to read the single page I had prepared. 1. I will provide $150,000, not as a gift, but as an investment in Mitchell Hardware, with terms to be outlined in a separate legal agreement. 2. All 3 of us plus Mom will attend family therapy sessions twice monthly for a minimum of 6 months. 3. Thomas will resume Gamblers Anonymous meetings and work with a financial counselor on a recovery plan. 4. Mom will have equal say in all major family and business decisions going forward. 5. A professional business consultant of my choosing will assess operations and implement recommended changes. 6. I will have no direct operational role in the business, but will serve in an advisory capacity during the restructuring period. My father read the document twice, his expression unreadable. Thomas stared at his copy, blinking rapidly to hold back tears. This is more than we asked for, my father finally said, tapping the financial figure. The $120,000 you requested is inadequate for proper restructuring, I explained. The additional $30,000 will provide a necessary buffer. And the therapy sessions, he almost sneered at the word, are non-negotiable, I stated firmly. This family has been broken for years, Dad. Money will not fix that. If you want my help rebuilding the business, we need to rebuild our relationships as well. And Mom, having equal say, he continued, focusing on the terms rather than the emotional content. She has wisdom you have ignored for decades, I said simply. And she is the only one of us who has maintained relationships with all family members. Her perspective is valuable. My father sat back, his internal struggle visible on his face. Pride battling necessity, the old Mitchell stubbornness warring with the reality of their situation. I cannot speak for Thomas regarding his personal recovery, he finally said. That must be his decision. Thomas looked up, surprising us both. I will do it, he said, with unexpected firmness. All of it. The meetings, the counseling. He turned to me. I hit rock bottom months ago, Garrett. I just did not want to admit it. If there is a way back from this, I want to find it. My father studied his hands for a long moment, then sighed deeply. Very well. We accept your terms. We spent the next hour discussing implementation details. A lawyer would draw up the investment agreement. I would research family therapists in their area. The business consultant would begin work the following week. Thomas would attend his first GA meeting that evening. As we prepared to leave, my father paused, seeming to struggle with something. Then, in a move that shocked me, he extended his arms awkwardly. It took me a moment to realize he was offering a hug, something he had not done since I was a child. I hesitated, then stepped forward into the embrace. He felt smaller than I remembered, more fragile. We held the position briefly, both unsure of this new territory, before stepping apart. Your grandfather would be proud, he said quietly. Not of the business situation, but of how you have handled yourself. Built something from nothing. Stood your ground. It was perhaps the most meaningful compliment he had ever given me. The months that followed were not easy. The family therapy sessions were often tense, with years of resentment and miscommunication surfacing painfully. My father struggled to express emotions while Thomas battled shame over his gambling addiction. My mother, finally given space to speak freely, revealed her own buried frustrations with being sidelined in family decisions. The business restructuring was equally challenging. The professional assessment confirmed what I had suspected: only 3 of the remaining stores were truly viable. The others were closed, their inventory liquidated to reduce debt. The core locations were reimagined with a stronger focus on contractor services and specialized tools that online retailers could not easily match. My mother surprised everyone with her business acumen once, given the opportunity to contribute. Her suggestions about community engagement and customer retention proved particularly valuable. My father, initially resistant to her input, gradually came to appreciate the fresh perspective she brought. Thomas threw himself into recovery with unexpected determination. He attended meetings, religiously worked with his sponsor, and slowly rebuilt his self-confidence separate from the family business identity. In time, he found a position with a construction management firm, where his knowledge of tools and materials was valued, but financial control remained with others. As for me, Waypoint Studio continued to thrive. The delayed expansion eventually happened, with a second location opening in Providence the following year. I maintained my advisory role, with Mitchell Hardware visiting monthly to review progress and suggest adjustments. The company that emerged from restructuring bore little resemblance to the empire my father had built. Smaller, more focused, and more adaptable, it catered to a specific market niche rather than trying to compete directly with big-box stores and online giants. It would never again be the dominant force in the region, but it became sustainable, even modestly profitable. More importantly, our family found a new equilibrium. The therapy sessions gradually shifted from crisis management to genuine communication. My father would never be effusively emotional, but he learned to express appreciation and respect in his own way. When a major tattoo convention invited me to be a featured artist, he and my mother attended the opening night, my father awkwardly but sincerely introducing himself to my colleagues. 3 years after that late-night phone call, we gathered for Thanksgiving at my parents' home. The house was smaller, the meal less elaborate than in years past, but the atmosphere was warmer, more authentic. As we sat around the table, my father raised his glass. To family, he said simply, and to finding our own paths. I caught my mother's eye across the table, saw the tears of happiness she made no effort to hide. Thomas, now 1,000 days gambling free, according to the chip he carried in his pocket, smiled with a serenity I had never seen in him before. We had lost a fortune, but found something more valuable, something that had been missing even when the Mitchell name adorned buildings and our bank accounts overflowed: genuine connection, mutual respect, and the freedom to be ourselves. As I look back on this journey now, I realize that true success is not measured by inheritance or legacy businesses. It comes from having the courage to follow your authentic path, even when that means disappointing those you love. It comes from building something that reflects your values and vision, not someone else's expectations. And sometimes it comes from finding the strength to help the very people who hurt you, not out of obligation, but out of compassion and a desire for healing. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? What would you have done in my situation? Would you have helped the family that rejected you or walked away? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding your way through family conflict and coming out stronger on the other side. Thank you for listening, and remember, the most meaningful legacy is not the one you inherit, but the one you create yourself.